Now, you all may remember that when we first started this Fear of the Lord year-long series, there was a question that I asked you in one of the teachings, and that question was, why should we have the fear of the Lord? I'm going to ask again, why should we have the fear of the Lord? And I want to bring you back to Matthew chapter 10, verse 28. And Jesus said, do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Fear him who is able to destroy both body and soul in hell. Why should we have the fear of the Lord? Cameron, why are you bringing that up again? Because as you all know, in the last teaching, we were talking about Abram. We talked about how Abram, he was 75 years old when the Lord called him to leave his nation, when the Lord called him to leave his family, when the Lord called him to leave his father's house and to take his wife and to take maybe those who were working for him, and to go to the land in which God had promised them. So now tonight, we're going to continue with that story. And I wanted to start off there with Matthew chapter 10, verse 28, to show you how that ties in with Abram in Egypt, okay? So I want to bring you all to Genesis chapter 12, verse 10. We're going to start at verse 10 here, and we're going to be going through verse 20. So Genesis chapter 12, verse 10. Forgive me here. And it says, now there was a famine in the land. Now remember, the Lord had brought Abram and his family to the land of Canaan, okay? So there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to dwell there, for the famine was severe in the land, okay? And it came to pass when he was close to entering Egypt that he said to Sarai, his wife, indeed, I know that you are a woman of beautiful countenance. Therefore, it will happen when the Egyptians see you that they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will let you live. Please say you are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and that I may live because of you. Now, already right here, I want to go back to verse 11 here. Abram, the fear entered not even when he had entered Egypt. He began to have fear of man when he was close to entering Egypt. Some of you, you are close to entering a place in which you may have to go. Maybe the Lord has called you to go somewhere. Maybe you're seeking help. You're seeking assistance. You're applying for a new job, whatever it may be. You are going somewhere. You're stepping out on faith. And because you have the fear of man, you start to do what Abram did, and you start to have all of these scenarios as to what will happen to you, what can possibly happen to you. Abram had not even entered Egypt yet. The Bible says he was close to entering Egypt. Again, some of you are close and you're afraid. Some of you are a few inches away, you're afraid. You're a few feet away, you're afraid. You're a few miles away, you're afraid. You're a few days away, you're afraid. You're a few years away, and you're already afraid. Abram was close to entering Egypt. He said to Sarai, his wife, indeed, I know that you are a woman of beautiful countenance. Look at how Abram is already trying to be sweet, okay? Abram sounds like me. My wife will sometimes say to me, if I'm being sweet, and not that I'm not ever sweet to her, but sometimes, she'll say, what do you want? You got a motive. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Why are you telling me this? What do you have planned? What's your hidden agenda? Abram starts out here, indeed, I know that you are a woman of beautiful countenance. Therefore, it will happen. Abram has the audacity to say what is going to happen to him. when God had just recently promised him that Abram will be the father of many nations. Okay. He's going to bring him to a land and he's going to have descendants in this land. Okay. Therefore, it will happen when the Egyptians see you that they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will let you live. See, Abram, he's doing this out of the fear of man, out of the fear of Egyptians. When you have the fear of man, what does this result in you doing? What did Abram say here in verse 13? Please say you are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and that I may live because of you. When you have the fear of man, it will cause you to lie. See, here it is. Abram, he told Sarai, his wife, to lie. Now, for those of you that study the Bible closely, and I'm not talking about you just skim over it, you just read the verse of the day. No, you actually sit down and you study the Bible. You will see that Sarai was Abram's half-sister, but she was also his wife. So some will say, oh, well, Abram wasn't lying then. I mean, this is his sister, Cam. Like, you know, he just didn't tell the detail that, hey, she is also his wife. But I want to warn you all today that even a half truth is a lie. If you don't tell the entire truth, you are lying. That makes you a liar. So some of you may sometimes say, well, I'm going to say this part, but I'm not going to say it all. It's because you're lying. You may say, well, I'm going to share this part of the story, you know, and I'm telling the truth. I'm just not going to tell the other part of the story because I'm pretty ashamed of it, or I'm afraid of man. When you have the fear of men, it will cause you to lie. Abram said, please say you are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and that I may live because of you. Abram was putting the faith. See, this is the other thing. When you have the fear of man, you think that your life is in the hands of man. Abram thought that his life was in the hands of the Egyptians, okay? I always say Abram, he had the fear of the Lord, 100%. I won't ever say that Abram did not have that. But it's in this story, it's in this text here, in these few verses that we're reviewing tonight, where we see that Abram, for a moment, he feared man. He feared the Egyptians, okay? He thought that his life was in the hands of the Egyptians because his wife Sarai was so beautiful. He forgot about the Lord who had just called him out. He forgot the God who had just said, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. When you have the fear of man, you forget the promises of God. You forget the very things in which God has just promised you. You forget the very things in which God has just told you. Abram saw how beautiful his wife was. He saw how beautiful her face was. He saw how beautiful her figure was. But Abram also knew how ruthless Egyptians could be. He also knew that the way Egyptians function clearly, he knew that if the Egyptians saw his wife, they would possibly kill him. If they knew that Sarai was his wife, that they would possibly kill him. Abram's fear was of man and not of the Lord in this story. Let's go on to verse 14 here. So it was when Abram came into Egypt that the Egyptians saw the woman, that she was very beautiful. The princes of Pharaoh also saw her and commended her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. This basically means that they saw how beautiful Sarai was. They went ahead and said, hey, man, we want to introduce you to Pharaoh. She was taken to Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh treated Abram well for her sake. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys, and camels. So while Sarai is living under this lie in the roof of Pharaoh, under the roof of Pharaoh's house, okay, I want you all to think about all that's going through Sarai's mind. She's in territory that she is not familiar with. She's in another man's house who is not her husband. All of this going on under the guise of a lie. All of this taking place. Abram, on the other hand, he's on the outside being blessed, being given sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys, and camels. This is why I tell people, if you got to lie to be promoted, that is not of God. If you got to lie to get a job, that is not of God. If you got to lie to be put into a place of honor, to be in a seat that you desire, to be in a position that you desire to go to, and you say, I got to lie to get there. I got to lie to be well. I got to lie to live. I got to lie to strive. That shows that you have the fear of man and not the fear of the Lord. Sarai is in this man's house who she does not know, who she is not familiar with, who is not her husband, because her husband had them come into Egypt under a lie because he was afraid. Men, all the men listening today, this is my warning to you. Do not put your family in danger because of your fear of man. I'm going to say it again. Do not put your family, don't put your wife, don't put your children, don't put your sons and your daughters. Do not put your family in danger because of your fear of man. Abram, Sarai, he had Sarai really in a dangerous place. If they would have found out at this moment that Abram was lying, they could have even held his wife Sarai accountable, and both of them could have been killed. But because of God's grace and mercy, he clearly kept Abram. Let's go to verse 17. But the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Wait a minute. Ladies, you should like this part. But the Lord plagued Pharaoh, his house. So not just Pharaoh's house, not just his servants, not just his children, not just his staff. He also plagued Pharaoh. This man back then who claimed to be God. The Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of who? Sarai, Abram's wife. Not because of Abram. Why not because of Abram? Sarai was only in that place because of Abram's lie, because of Abram's fear of man. Sarai was only in the house of Pharaoh because she submitted to her husband, who said, hey, I need you to do this. And the reason I need you to do this is because, honestly, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to die. I'm afraid to lose my life. I'm afraid to lose it. So Sarai, what I'm going to need you to do, honey, you are so beautiful. You are the most beautiful woman in the world. And because you are so beautiful, I'm going to need you to tell them, we're going to just say that you're my sister, not my wife. The Lord had mercy on Abram. When he saw Sarai, he figured, I can't punish Sarai because Sarai is just being submissive. Sarai is just doing what her husband asked her to do. So the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, now a lot of people say there's a gap here between verses 17 and 18. There must have been some things that taken place before Pharaoh called Abram, because we don't read in the Bible too much that Pharaoh recognized the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Even though this is all before Exodus and all of that, we don't see in the text that Pharaoh ever had a reverence for the Lord God Almighty. So let's go to verse 18. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Now, if you all ask me, my assumption is that, hey, God either appeared to Pharaoh himself, which is personally my belief. It's not written here in the word, but it's my personal belief. God himself told Pharaoh, that is another man's wife. This woman whom you now have under your roof is Abram's wife, and that is why you are being plagued. That is why the rest of your house is being plagued, because of her. That is my daughter. Don't you dare disrespect her. Don't you dare touch her. So now Pharaoh is angry. What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister? Abram, why did you lie? I might have taken her as my wife. Now, therefore, here is your wife. I love how he said, here is your wife. I know you were lying, Abram. I know that you came into Egypt in this lie. And you won't lie to me anymore. Now, therefore, here is your wife. And I imagine Pharaoh spoke like a lot of our parents probably spoke to us when we would do something that we weren't supposed to do, and they would tell us to go to our room. This is what Pharaoh said. Take her and go your way. And I'm sure, that's what's written in the Bible. I can imagine Pharaoh saying, I don't ever want to see your face again. Don't you dare come back to Egypt lying to me. So Pharaoh commanded his men, verse 20. Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. Cameron, where do you see God's mercy in this story on Abram? We see how he protected Sarai. But how can you say that he had mercy on Abram? Do you all remember? Remember that Pharaoh, he gave Abram sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys, and camels. He didn't take any of those things away. He sent it all away with Abram. This was a sign here that God's hand was still on Abram, and that the Lord would not go back on his promise. What is the purpose of this teaching tonight? Do not put your fear in man. As Jesus said in Matthew chapter 10, verse 28, do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who was able to destroy both soul and body in hell. So I end this teaching tonight asking you all this very simple question. Do you have the fear of the Lord, or do you have the fear